here to tell you that nobody wants to get this done more than me. The holdup right now is that Speaker Boehner took a position, I think the day after the campaign, that said, we're willing to bring in revenue, but we're not willing to increase rates. We can probably solve this in about a week. It's not that tough. But we need that conceptual breakthrough.
We have a debt problem that is out of control. We've got to cut spending, and I believe that it's appropriate to put revenues on the table. Now, the revenues we're putting on the table are going to come from, guess who? The rich. Now, there are ways to limit deductions, close loopholes, and have the same people pay more of their money to the federal government without raising tax rates, which we believe will harm our economy. I'll be here, and I'll be available at any moment to sit down with the president to get serious about solving this problem.
The back and forth today in the Fiscal Cliff, negotiations that really aren't negotiations as they're not sitting in one room. Also today, Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner said in an interview that there's a little bit of progress, but yes, the White House would, quote, absolutely go over the fiscal cliff if Republicans would not raise tax rates. Now, Republicans are pointing back to July 2011 and this statement by President Obama.
What we said was give us $1.2 trillion in additional revenues, which could be accomplished without hiking tax rates, but could simply be accomplished by eliminating loopholes, eliminating some deductions, and engaging in a tax reform process that could have lowered rates generally while broadening the base.
Look, I love the way the president says what we need is a conceptual breakthrough, meaning Republicans have to accept a hike in rates. What he means is a political surrender, because there is no economic reason why you cannot raise the money he wants raised by doing it through eliminating deductions, exclusions, and credits. Number one, as we saw, he himself said so a year and a half ago. Secondly, the same debt reduction commission he appointed, and then of course ignored, spoke about raising much more through eliminating deductions and loopholes and credits, broadening the base, and at the same time lowering the rates. That's the economic ideal. Everybody understands this is what happened in '86 in the tax reform. It's what was recommended in the Debt Reduction Commission. In their three scenarios, in one of them, they would eliminate so many deductions that they would lower the upper rates to 23% and still come out revenue neutral. So of course it can be done. The breakthrough that the president is talking about is to break the Republicans, to create a civil war in the House by insisting that they go back on the idea of not raising rates, which is economically a correct idea. It encourages economic growth if you lower rates, or at least you keep them the same. This is all about politics, nothing about economics.
We are not going to play that game next year. If Congress in any way suggests that they're going to tie negotiations to debt ceiling votes and take us to the brink of default once again as part of a budget negotiation, which, by the way, we have never done in our history until we did it last year, I will not play that game, because we've got to break that habit before it starts.
How much can the government, do you think, hold off some of the bad things that happen after the first of the year?
He can hold off some of it for a few months, but this is a catastrophe. And the president thinks that by beginning to rattle the cage on this and to say now we have to start alerting contractors that jobs will be lost, that somehow that's to his advantage. I think it's exactly the opposite. He's the president. He's commander-in-chief. His own Secretary of Defense has said in public, in testimony, that this would be a hollowing out of the military. It would be catastrophic, and he implied that he would resign if it went into effect, that he couldn't in good conscience administer cuts like this. So you've got a president who's in charge and who's going to do what? Who'll blame it on Republicans? But in fact, it's his military, his administration, and what's his Secretary of Defense going to do? So I think, again, Republicans have to rethink the idea that Obama holds all the cards here. This is a great negative against Obama if we end up with these huge cuts in defense, which are utterly insupportable.
As you may know, Marco is joining an elite group of past recipients for this award. 2 of us so far. I'll see you at the reunion dinner, table for 2. You know any good diners in New Hampshire or Iowa, right? Yeah.
Paul, thank you for your invitation for lunch in Iowa and New Hampshire. But I will not stand by and watch the people of South Carolina ignored. Now, I've heard it suggested that the problem is that the American people have changed, that too many people want things from government. But I'm still convinced that the overwhelming majority of our people, they just want what my parents had. A chance, a real chance to earn a good living and provide even better opportunities for their children.
When one economic policy after another has failed our working families, it's no answer to simply express compassion for them or to create more government programs that offer promise but don't perform. Instead, we must come together and advance new strategies for lifting people out of poverty.
I do think that we're looking at the future of the party. It's a whole generational change. They're all essentially Reaganites. I think the big doctrinal disputes of the past are over between the Goldwater Republicans and the Rockefeller Republicans. And you look at this generation, just about all of them could have run in 2012, but we're just a little early. They're now all going to be coming into their own. You saw Rubio and Ryan. You've got the governors, Jindal, Scott Walker of Wisconsin, Chris Christie as soon as he comes out of quarantine. You've got Jeb Bush, Mitch Daniels on the outside, up-and-coming senators, Kelly Ayotte and Ted Cruz, who's coming in from Texas.
Governor Susana Martinez.
Exactly. There's really a long and inspiring list. New leaders with a lot of, I would say, ideological energy and intellectual depth. And there's one other factor. 2016, assuming our economy's still around, is going to mark a year where there's going to be an open seat. Since 1953, every time, with one exception, every time one party has held the White House 2 terms, they've been kicked out. The one exception, of course, is Reagan-Bush. Reagan being the most successful president of the second half of the century. So the American calendar, history, and tradition is you get 2 terms, and then the other guys are coming in. So this is really a prize. Then that will, in and of itself, bring out, I think, the best young leaders.
This has been a Sunfish production.